So, but Ali, go ahead, inshallah, and we can go from there.
Let me start, inshallah. It is on their songs, on their cars, around their necks, and on their walls, both physical and cyber. The cross of Christ dominates Christian symbolism, theology, and sermons. Yet, we often misunderstand the atonement, how Christ's death makes us right with God, or reduced it to one dimension like a pearl, when in fact it is much more like a multifaceted function. This is very important to understand. Even according to the new covenant of Christianity, there is no such a thing as one understanding. In the book, The Scandal of the Cross, on page 23, they say, as we will document in subsequent chapters, the idea that the Bible or the classical Christian tradition has one view of the atonement is unfounded. So, thinking that the New Covenant and the New Testament only have one idea of atonement is wrong. There are different methods of salvation according to the New Covenant of the New Testament. First one is what they call the ransom theory. Satan once showed Jesus all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time and then said, to you I will give all this authority and their glory. Luke chapter 4 verse 6. On the basis of this text, some have concluded that when the first human rebelled against God, they transferred the dominion and authority over this world to Satan. In fact, when he ascended, he led a host of captives with him, liberating them from Satan's custody. It is one of the understanding. What does this death of Christ do? Augustine of Hippo, in the 4th and 5th century, he says, for men were held captive under the devil and served devils, but they were redeemed from captivity. They could sell, but they could not redeem themselves. The Redeemer came and gave a price. He poured forth his blood and bought the whole world. The blood of Christ was the price. You see, in ransom theory, Satan has everybody captive.
What? Sorry,
Inshallah, I get to that.
Did you? Sorry, Did you just say that the unalivement of Jesus was to pay Satan?
Yes, this is one of the earliest understanding of the soteriology about the blood of Christ.
What's the reference with that again?
This is from Augustine in the book of Scandals of the Cross, on pages 121 going on to 125. They go through all of this. You see, based on time, I had to shorten all of this stuff just to give the understanding about this different understanding of how a Christian gets his salvation. There is no such a thing as one idea. The same Christians who are writing this, they say the typical criticism leveled against this way of looking at Christ's death is that it gives too much authority to the devil, as if he is somehow God's equal. The idea that God is making deals with Satan for human lives and even employing trickery may appear startling, if not revolting. The message of salvation is by trickery, is by involving Satan, is revolting, says this guy. The next method of salvation is what they call Christus Victor theory. The Christus Victor theory, or Christ the Conqueror, sets the cross within a cosmic battle between Satan and God. It picks up on the spiritual warfare motive found throughout scriptures. God having warfare with Satan, which is according to them to be found in all of the scriptures. In short, writer Gregory Boyd, he writes, Jesus' main mission was to bring an end to the cosmic war that had been raging from time immemorial and to thus set Satan's captives free. Luke chapter 4 verse 18, Ephesians chapter 4 verse 8. Do you hear that? This is the method of salvation in Christianity. According to Thomas Schreiner, one of the problems of Christus Victor model is that it says very little about human sin and the need for forgiveness. It is as if Satan has power over us to nudge us towards sin, thus excusing us of our own personal responsibilities. In addition, it is not clear exactly how the crucifixion actually defeats a spiritual power. The other one which they have is moral exemplar theory. Jesus' death deals with the subjective rather than the objective ramification of sin. So even the salvation is just subjective, akhi. It's not even objective. Rather than focusing on what happened with God and Satan, the view looks at how Christ's death affects people. Like many before and after him, Augustine accepted that in Christ's suffering, our Lord has deigned to give us an example of patience. And as you know, they say that his pain is our gain. You see, they are happy with that. They are proud that he had all of this pain. At the beginning of this conversation, we said something, which, by the way, the same book is talking about. Akhi Wissam, listen, on page 132, they say, as we have noted, some contemporary theologians view Anselm was an 11th century guy who came with the understanding of atonement. They say the understanding of this guy, this Anselm Cordo, as the author of the divine child abuse model of the atonement. Divine child abuse, they say that one that pictures a wrathful God punishing his son. The same book, The Scandal of the Cross, on page 26. Unfortunately, for such portrait, our knowledge of specifics of crucifixion in the ancient world is almost nil. Akhi, what does nil mean?
Zilch.
Nada.
So our information about the historicity of crucifixion in ancient world is zilch. Wait a minute, they be telling us crucifixion, the most historical fact of history. Hey, this guy is writing our information about crucifixion in antiquity is nil. There is not one objective evidence of any crucifixion during the earliest periods. I'm not talking about crucifixion of Christ. I'm talking about any crucifixion. You see, Josephus, in his book of war, he is talking about all of this warmongering which the Romans are doing, all of this crucifixion which they are doing, all of them Jews which they are crucifying. He's writing about all of that. Yet, not one objective evidence of that. So these people are saying we don't have any information. With the result that these reports are often little more than the product of active, dramatic imagination. Do you see that? The most historical fact in history is just the imagination.
Double
entendre. Irenaeus, this is from page 119. Irenaeus talks about this Christ victor. You remember I was talking about one of these methods? Christ the conqueror. Irenaeus talks about that. Let me read what he says. He talks about this in against heresies, by the way. volume 3. Irenaeus argued that humans cannot, through knowledge or any other means of their own, escape their corrupted state. Salvation can only be through Christ. Irenaeus stressing the Pauline parallelism. You remember I told you all of these references which we're getting about all of this method, Paul. Yet Irenaeus is talking about this Pauline parallelism between Adam and Christ, emphasized that Adam was the originator of a disobedient race. This is what they think about humanity. You see, low life, captive to Satan and whatnot, disobedient race, and Christ inaugurated a new redeemed humanity. Central to his thinking was an idea he calls recapitulation. He writes, God recapitulated in himself ancient formation of man and woman that he might kill sin, deprive death of its power. So the death of Christ is to take the power of death. You see, God has to kill his only monogenes Theos, his only beloved son. For this, let me skip Irenaeus. On page 122, they write, as theologians and preachers like Irenaeus spoke of Jesus Christ's saving works in the term of ransom, which we're talking about, the ransom theory, one of the understanding, inadvertently the question arose, to whom is that ransom paid? To whom is that ransom paid? The most common answer was to the devil. Do you see that? So the understanding of salvation in early Christianity is that Jesus had to die and pay his blood as a ransom to the devil. In Christianity, the method of salvation was that Jesus gave his blood to the devil. Origen of Alexandria lived in the 2nd century and died in the 3rd century, was the first who developed a detailed theory of how Jesus was a ransom payment to the devil. To whom, he writes, did he give his life a ransom for many? Assuredly not to God. Assuredly not to God. This is very important. Well, later on, other Christians say, no, it was not the devil. And assuredly it was not the God. He paid it to no man. Understand it. He came to give his life to no man as a ransom. They say that, but let me read what Origen says. Assuredly not to God. Could it then be on the evil one? He says, it is not God. The ransom has been paid. To whom is it paid? It's not God. It must have been the devil. For he was holding fast until the ransom should be given to him. Even the life of Jesus being deceived with the idea that he could have dominion over it. Do you hear the deception? I get to that later. And nor seeing that he could not bear the torture, retaining it. The devil accepted the deal. Do you see how this Christian gets salvation? The devil accepted the deal. But according to Origen, the goodness of Jesus was too much for the devil. His goodness is too much for the devil. He could not stand having Jesus in his grasp. This was torturous. So he let go and lost his ransom payment after having already given up his prisoners. Do you see that? You see, I want to talk about Gregory of Nyssa and Nazianzus and all of them church fathers, John Chrysostom, Augustine or Hippo, but it will get too long. But it is obvious there are different understanding of why did he die in first place. After that, the method which he died, there is nil understanding. nil objective evidence about it. And even if we accept what they're telling us, that he died for salvation, which salvation? Ransom theory, vicar Christ theory, moral theory, substitution theory, and there are more, Akhi. I just cut it short. So you see, there is no such a thing as one salvation.
Wissam, maybe while we're waiting, right? Can you sort of touch upon the ransom theory, what it means, what it entails, and how it's theologically inconsistent?
Me or Ali? I think Ali would be more appropriate for that, since that was part
Either
of
or.
it.
Either or. Okay,
Sure.
Brother Ali, go ahead.
تفضل Ali.
Okay, let me finish this deceiving idea. You see, they say the devil accepted the deal, but according to Origen, the goodness of Jesus was too much for the devil to handle. He could not stand having Jesus in his grasp. This was torturous to him. He let go and lost his ransom payment after having already given his prisoners. Gregory of Nyssa, he is one of the Cappadocian fathers, one of the people of Nicaea. You see, this is not such a nobody and nothing. This is one of the guy in Nicaea. You see, Gregory of Nyssa describes God as conquering the devil through trickery. You see, we hear many a time of them, oh, makir, khairul makirin, you know how they are. Yet the method of salvation which you have is based on trickery, according to Gregory of Nyssa, one of these Cappadocian fathers. He says God deceived or tricked the devil. On one hand, Gregory thought that God's justice would not allow God simply to rescue sinners by force. The devil had the right, you see that? The devil had a right to adequate compensation for the sinners who had sold themselves unto slavery to him. Do you see that? God has to compensate the devil. It was the blood of Christ.
God had to compensate?
Okay. Because the devil had rights which God had to respect, they say.
The devil
God had to respect.
What?
Yes, this is a salvation in Christianity.
Hell nah.
So you're saying the devil had rights over God?
I don't know over God or nothing, but he has his own right, which God had to respect. Now, go figure that one out. Right? He wrote, you see, this is from Gregory of Nyssa in the Great Catechism 22. This is the reference for this Christian. They can go read, or they can go to the book of Recovering the Scandal of the Cross, 122. He chose Jesus as a ransom for those who were shut up in the prison of death. So God chose Jesus as a ransom to free people. Okay? However, this what happened was trickery, because he was unaware of the divinity of Jesus hidden under his human flesh. So the devil didn't know how divine Jesus was. So he did not know, he cannot hold him. So God knew that, they say. So he knew the devil couldn't grasp him. He gave Jesus to him. The devil grasped him. He left human being alone from the slavery among the devil. And Jesus got free anyway. And Gregory of Nyssa says this is trickery. The deity was hidden under the veil of our nature, that so as with a ravenous fish, the hook of the deity might be gulped down along with the bait of flesh, and thus life being introduced into the house of death, and light shining in darkness, that which is diametrically opposed to light and life might vanish. For it is not in the nature of darkness to remain when light is present, or death to exist when life is active. In this way, God triumphed over the devil and the power of death. The blood of Christ, the sacrifice, was the method by which God triumphed over the devil and over power of the death. Gregory of Nyssa recognized that some may think it is inappropriate for God to act in a deceiving way. You see, this deceiving, it keeps coming back. Paul talking about salvation keeps coming back. See that, Akhi? The devil keeps coming back. By these methods, they get salvation. He responds, however, that God's actions were appropriate because they achieved a just result. And because the devil was getting what he deserved, it was okay. You see that, Akhi? Just because he was tricking the devil, this trickery is okay, he says. Where are these moral warriors who every day talking about Khairul Makirin? Where are you? Please come up. Tell us how good it is for your God to deceive. You see, this is from page 125. Namely, that the devil had certain rights and powers that God must respect. Could you imagine? God had to respect the rights of the devil by giving him his only monogenes Heos, his only beloved son, in whom he is well pleased. You see that? And they go on
That's
about
wild,
Gregory
man.
of Nazianzus, who also is a Cappadocian father. They say, like Origen, however, they placed more emphasis on the source of devil's downfall in his own self-deception. God did not deceive him. Rather, the devil overreached his own powers. So these people say, no, deception cannot be. But the devil grabbed for something which he could not handle. So it is the devil who is deceiving the devil. You understand? This is the method of salvation. As brother was talking about the Old Testament, one of the methods which they have is teshuvah. Teshuvah means tawbah. Is the same word which is used in Ezekiel chapter 18. Teshuvah, making teshuvah, coming back to God, forgiveness, salvation. In Islam, we have the same. We have tawbah. You understand? Yet, the New Testament, all of this method and understanding, which one do you choose? To whom was the ransom paid? Everybody gives different answer. So, to make it short, let us conclude. The Bible gives you a different method of salvation. The Bible gives you different understanding who is getting the ransom by which you are getting your salvation. See, one of the methods that we are talking about, they were talking about Textus Classicus, which is John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son. And they say, you see, this is the love of God. Because of his love, he gave his son to be sacrificed. Now, I want to give you John 3:16 plus, without any shedding of blood, even better than John 3:16. Akhi Wissam, you there? Please recite this word, these verses which I'm giving you. This is John 3:16 plus, Surah Al-Anbiya, verse 107. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ
إلا رحمة للعالمين. Subhanallah.
Exactly.
Inshallah, recite it if you can.
They John 3:16 is out of the love, is sacrificed, but only begotten Son of God. In Islam, our Prophet has come as a mercy to all of the world.
Allahu Akbar.
Let
That's
that
beautiful.
sink in.
Yeah. Never made that connection before, subhanallah. That's beautiful. But yeah, thank
That
you,
sink
Ali.
in.
I learned, again, an incredible amount of material that I don't think I would have gotten anywhere else had it not been for your presentation. You're always like the master of these like very niche understandings and these very mind-blowing concepts that seriously I wouldn't even know where to look for them to begin to look for them. And thank you for Ahmed for hosting this. Inshallah, everybody benefited. If yeah, there wasn't a lot of engagement, but inshallah, the Muslims, they can understand now how to like approach this topic, as it is very important. And in my da'wah, alhamdulillah, this is probably one of the more like conducive and more relatable and more successful ways to engage with Christians rather than the nerdy stuff. So yeah, inshallah, hopefully everybody benefited. Barakallah feekum. Make dua for everybody involved. Inshallah, we'll see you on the next topic, inshallah.
SubhanAllah, barakallahu feekum. Wow. Talk about ending on a crescendo. I gotta rewatch this. My mind's a little bit scrambled at the moment. Wallahi, I was not expecting this, Ali. But just to sort of, I guess, quick summary on everything. So, in terms of the discussion, Brother Wissam, and I'm just going to give a high level wrap up and then I'll just ask them to sort of finish off from there. But just high level, Brother Wissam sort of gave us the Islamic understanding of the concept of salvation in Islam, how simple, how beautiful, how rational, how logical it actually is, right? And then what was also discussed was also the similarities in terms of the concept of salvation in some parts of how the Old Testament goes about forgiving sins, right? And he gave many, many examples. I think he gave over 9, 10 examples all the way between Leviticus, Numbers, Exodus. Went through all of those particular books and gave examples as to how people were forgiven, whether it be laying down, whether it be giving flour for unintentional or intentional, what the ramifications for each were, so on and so forth. And there were some alignments with the Islamic theology. And then he gave we sort of touched upon the Christian narrative and blood sacrifice, and how illogical and inconsistent it seemed from the Old Testament itself, based on the readings that were there and the evidence that was provided, right? And how illogical it sounded from not only from a rational mindset, but also from a theological framework and also from a scriptural framework as well, right? And then from there, Brother Ali sort of went in a very unique sort of perspective. He sort of touched upon a lot of what the church fathers believed in with regards to the sacrifice or the theory that comes behind it, whether it be the debt that was given to Satan, which was literally blew my mind, in all honesty, that God owed a debt. God owed a debt to some other creation of his that he needed to pay. So who did he need to pay to? The devil. And he went across looking at different church fathers. I think he mentioned Gregory of Nicaea, Gregory of Nazianzus, Gregory of Nyssa. I think he also mentioned the historian Origen and one or two other sort of church fathers as well.